So we have started the recording, and this is going to be Michael Day 5, I think, if we can all count to 5.
Yep.
And anything that we should be talking about before we do that?
Not for me.
No.
I'd say I'm finding this process totally interesting, so let's do it.
Okay. Um, so these are all this morning. Um, I've developed a whole system of notation for how to write this stuff down now, which I won't bore you with. Um, so I was
So let me say as just an aside about that. That's great as far as I'm concerned, and I want you to be a independent researcher, developing your own way of doing things. I think, and 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 I'm guessing that you're noticing that there would have been no way for me to have told you how to do that.
no, yeah, that's
It,
correct. That's
you have
correct.
you have to do it yourself. We can be aimed at the same goal or similar goals or overlapping goals or whatever. But but you're on your side of what I call the chasm. You're doing it your way, and I'm on my side of the chasm. And I haven't told you how to do it, and this is exactly why.
That experientially makes full complete sense.
Well,
Um,
but I
so
digress.
no, that was relevant. So I was backing out of my just background information. I was backing out of my driveway this morning. I was It was a quiet, dark morning. I was very much, I don't know, my mind was, I wasn't very present to myself um, until the beep went off. Um, and ironically, what was happening in the moment was that my car was beeping, and um, although it's a different beep, so there wasn't any confusion about which beep was which. But um, this is also background information, but I think relevant also experientially because of why it was beeping. So I probably should tell you that. I have a this is a relatively new car to me. My newest car before this one was 2004, and this one's much newer than that. So it has things like a backup camera and stuff like that, which drives me insane. I mean, you may say you're already insane, but this doesn't help. Um, and here's an example of that. I have a bike rack on the back of my car, and the backup camera does not understand that the bike rack, I will not run into the bike rack. And so it's beeping at me, and there's this like large red circle in the car on the dashboard that's flashing red at the same time. And the beep of the beep of the beeper went off while this was happening. And while at some point in the phrase, the phrase I said was, "Come on," almost like that. It was kind of pleading and exasperated. That's why I think that history is important because that was, although I wasn't like formulating in my own mind the words, "Gosh, this always happens, you stupid camera, you don't know that there's a bike rack back there." Somehow that's behind the exasperation that I'm feeling because this is not the first time this has happened, of course. Um, and I'm a little exasperated with myself as well because I keep meaning to do something to stop this from happening, even if it's just like putting black tape over the camera or something. I don't know. I should do something. But so I'm exasperated with the car. I'm exasperated with myself, the whole situation. But all of that is just kind of packed into the come on. I would say that come on came out almost involuntarily, almost like if you were to say ouch in response to something happening. There was certainly I didn't it wasn't premeditated in any way. Um, it was very much like an ouch.
So more an expostulation than a speaking.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like I was telling. I mean, I talk to myself a lot. I guess that's kind of obvious by now, um, but usually that there's some purpose behind it. Like I'm telling myself something, or I'm imagining a conversation, or whatever. But this wasn't anything like that. This wasn't so much a speech act as it was a, ugh,
Got it. And is there anything else going on in your experience?
no, that was it.
So I would like to be clear. I would like I want to be clear. I guess that's what I'm saying. I want to be clear. Do you feel exasperated, pleading, whatever with the car, or is that background and it's just that I am saying, come on, with a pleading, exasperated tone or whatever?
I mean, I almost want to say both because the I would say that the exasperation was manifest to me. I was, it's not that I was, it was manifested in the way I said it, or in the very fact of its being said. But if you're asking, was there a meta thought to the effect of, gosh, I'm exasperated right now? No. But I was definitely feeling exasperated in the sense of it was an exasperating experience. But that wasn't
So
formulated.
I'm
Go ahead.
definitely not asking about a meta-formulated thought. I'm accepting that there is not such a thing.
Right.
What I'm trying to get at is whether there is an experience of exasperation. I'm accepting that you are exasperated. There's no question about that. And
Right.
I'm accepting that you are expostulating, come on, in a exasperated way. The question is, if for whatever reason maybe you didn't say come on, would you still feel exasperated? And if so, how would that feel? And the answer
Mm.
to that might be I don't feel it, but I am exasperated and I speak in an exasperated way. Or it could be I do feel exasperated and this is how that feels, or the question doesn't make sense or whatever.
I mean, the question makes sense. When I paused to write stuff, when I paused to write all this down, because it went off, I was pulling on my driveway, so I just literally stopped on the side of the road and out, and wrote the stuff down. So it was right afterwards. Um, Sorry, that wasn't a very good way of answering your question. I'm not going to answer your question, but here's a better way of not answering your question.
Fair enough.
Um, there certainly, so counterfactually, if I hadn't said, come on, would I have still felt exasperated? I think so. Um, and if that had been the situation, what would this whole thing look like? Probably I would have focused on that feel. I would have identified that feeling. I don't know how it would have manifested exactly. Um, but in fact, what happened was I said, come on, and to whatever extent I was exasperated, the feeling of it was contained in the saying of come on. There was not some other like bodily sensation or something like that that was also the exasperation. That's how it manifested, was in the saying.
So I think you've answered exactly the question that I asked in a quite skillful way, I think. So
Okay.
what I'm understanding, and so let me tell you what I'm understanding. You tell me whether I got it right. I was exasperated. That's as a matter of fact, I was exasperated for all the historical reasons that you've said,
Hmm.
and I expressed that exasperation in the come on, and I didn't experience exasperation in any way beyond that. But if I hadn't said come on, I might have. So it's not like I'm ruling out the possibility of that experience. But it's not like I said come on, and at the same time I felt tension in my chest or
Right.
I felt a mental exasperation or whatever that was separate from the come on.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? And maybe about your question, Russ, a little bit. So last time, um, there was an experience, I don't remember if it was last time or the time before, but there was an experience of um, anger manifested as spider crawling on head.
Yep.
Um, would it be fair to say that the exasperation was manifested in the come on?
Yes.
And is that an okay question to ask?
Fine by me, but I'm not
I'm asking Russ.
I think so. It seems to me that there's something different about it, but I can't put my finger on it. Maybe in the comments I'll figure it out
Okay.
and answer that question. I'm not trying to evade the question.
Okay. Okay.
It seems like it's in the same ballpark.
Okay.
No, that's not true. So this is what it seems like the difference is. The difference was the difference is as it seems to me, and this is all everything is always a question and open the discussion over. But the difference as it seems to me is that in the bug on my head deal, that was anger. I felt anger, and it was this.
Mm, mhm,
And
mhm,
here, the
mhm,
experiences of saying "come on" with exasperation, but it's not that I feel exasperation. It's like I'm
mhm,
saying "come on," colored by exasperation or
mhm,
something.
that I
mhm,
think that's a fair distinction.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. That makes sense.
So what difference that distinction makes, I don't actually know.
I don't either,
But it,
but I agree to the distinction.
and and as far as my career is concerned, that's all there is.
Right.
I want to make those distinctions.
So sorry, I know I'm kind of getting away a little bit from just the experience itself, but I guess more generally, the kind of question I just asked was, I guess, I'm not sure that it clarified Michael's experience of this moment, but it helped me, maybe us, make that distinction. And so from that perspective, is it helpful? And more generally, like a kind of question that maybe isn't specifically about the experience, but maybe helps make distinctions that may be helpful down the line. Is that the kind of question that is okay to ask?
Yes, that is the heart of the iterative process as far as I'm
Okay,
concerned,
okay.
because not only is the iterative process designed for Michael to become better at apprehending and describing or whatever, but it's for us to be able to become better at asking and understanding what it is that he's saying. As long as, but the iterative process shouldn't stand in the way of, as long as you can, as long as you can ask an iterative question which goes away from the experience and maybe doesn't help about this experience, but doesn't screw up this experience, then everything's cool.
Okay.
I mean, I found the distinction that Russ made in response to the question actually clarificatory for myself, for what that's worth.
And I found Agnes's question help me to make it
Yeah,
clear,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
help me
yeah.
to clarify it so that then it would be clarified. So the question was a useful question, I think, as far as this process is concerned. And I would say it's another example of of being of having it's a three-sided chasm. Agnes is on her side, and I'm on my side, and Michael's on her, and we don't have exactly the same interests in this process. That is just the way it is. But they overlap, they intersect, and as long as we can keep that intersection clear, the heart of the matter is Michael's experience, and we got to figure out how to do that. Otherwise, Agnes is fucking up the whole process, or I am, or Michael is, or whatever. That's
Right. That makes sense.
so. I think I'm happy with beep number one. You done with that?
I think I'm happy with, I mean, I was going to ask one clarifying question earlier, um, but maybe it's already been answered. The whole of the experience was just the come on.
No, I was seeing the red circle. I was hearing the car beep at me and I was seeing the red circle also.
Okay, because I had written down the red circle and I wasn't sure whether that was also part of the
Oh,
experience.
sorry. Maybe I should have been more clear about distinguishing background from foreground.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
I was definitely aware of the red circle, and I was aware of the car making the boop, 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 boop sound.
So should we talk about that as well, or
Probably. And so the term aware is a little problematic for me for a variety of reasons. So is that in your experience? Are you directly apprehending that?
Yeah, that's what I guess what I say aware. I've said something else in the vicinity of that before, which is something like if you were to stop and ask me, I would have been able to answer that question. But that's not what I mean here. I don't mean that if you had asked me, is the car beeping or is the red light on, that I would have been able to answer it. I mean, I was, they were part of my experience at the time.
Okay. And and does it make sense to ask how much of your experience? Like, is it 33, 33, 33? I see beep and
It
say, come
does, and
on.
ironically, we're going to get to that in a minute. But the answer is, I did think about that in the moment, and I wrote 50-50.
So 50, come on, and 50 hearing and seeing.
Oh, no, no. I mean the red circle and the beep are 50-50. If you want to divide come on from those things, that's probably all the best I can say is 50-50-50. They were each 50%.
Okay. And that's totally fine with me. I think there isn't any reason why everything has to add up to 100.
I won't let my students hear you say that.
It depends on the realm. Everything is relative. And and are you so about, I guess I should ask about the redness. I see the red circle. Is it the red of the red circle or the
Yeah, it's
back
very much
back
the
up?
red. It's very much the red. I mean, these the red circle and the beeping are almost difficult to distinguish because they come together. I mean, of course, they can distinguish in one's heard and one's seen, but that's one reason I'm saying 50-50-50 is the red circle only comes on, at least as far as I know, I've never seen it come on in any other circumstance. It only comes on when the beep, 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 beep comes on also. So these are very tightly connected in my experience. And so that's why I'm saying I wasn't focused on one rather than the other. I was focused on just the overall fact that both of those things are happening. But the redness was very present to me because it's quite bright, especially on a dark morning.
So it is you are saying that it is the color redness, the bright color redness that is at least partially or maybe even prominently present. And I know that it means look out, you're backing up or whatever, backing into something. But at this particular moment, it is the redness of that rather than the warningness of it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
And the beeping, would we say the same thing about I'm hearing the pitch of the
Yeah,
beep, the
because
sound of the
that
beep?
also only ever happens. Maybe this card does that in other circumstances. I have no idea. But in my experience, that it only ever happens in exactly this situation.
So that could mean that I'm experiencing the warningness of it, but what I hear you saying is it's more about the color rather than the warningness of it for me at this particular moment.
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, again, these things are all tightly connected in my own mind, at least. The fact that it's a warning, the fact that it's a stupid warning, the fact that it's a red circle, the fact that it's beep 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 on a G for some reason. Um, all that is very tightly bound up, so it's difficult to distinguish those things. But the one thing that I was sure of in the moment after the moment after when I was writing this down is that because I knew you were going to ask me this, that the redness was very present to me.
Okay. And and is the beepingness present in the same way, or maybe the G-ness of it, or the
I wasn't reflecting on, I know it's a G because for other reasons. So it's not that I was not,
So this was not about the genus of that
no, it was
beeping.
not.
That would have been the sort of the parallel question to ask about the redness.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. The genus of it was not present.
Okay.
But the redness of the circle was present. I don't know why that distinction is what that means or why that would be the case, but that's what how it was.
So I don't know why it would be like that either, or what the significance of that is. And I think at least in part, this is an aside, the reason that we don't know the answer is that nobody's ever really been careful about asking about it.
Right.
If there were a lot of people out there asking the kinds of questions we're asking now and doing it fairly well, then we would be able to say, well, that's not important. We we have examined it, and it is meaningless.
Right.
Or we would be able to say, well, we've examined it, and this is why it is important and in what realm. But we don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't
I
think
certainly don't either.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure nobody knows the answer to that.
Okay.
So now I'm ready to go on to number two, if Agnes is happy with that.
I have one more question. What is the relative timing of the beeping red light experience and the come on?
Okay, so there's two ways of answering that. In my own experience, I don't know. I'm not, I wasn't aware now, and I have no recollection of like how much time might have passed between when the thing started and when I said that. Um, so it's not a part of my experience. So that difference in time was not any part of my experience. In the real world, it was probably pretty soon after, but I wasn't.
I'm only asking about your experience,
I know
Michael.
you are. So the answer is that was not part of my experience. That temporal
Okay.
relationship was not anything that was in my experience. I mean, it could have been. It could have been like I was aware that it had been going on for a while, and I finally said, "Come on," or something like that. But that's not how it went down.
You happy?
Yeah.
Number two.
Okay, so number two was shockingly soon after this. In fact, I was writing in the little book when number two happened.
So let me say if if what you're about to say is that you find it sort of confusing to be able to write about this while I'm writing about that, or to pay attention to this while I'm writing about that, then let's just skip this beep. If you're clear about what the experience was, then I'm happy to talk about this
I
beep.
think I'm pretty clear.
Okay.
Um,
But as a general rule, I think it's hard enough to describe a beep, and it's doubly hard or squaredly hard or whatever
right,
to describe a beep while you're describing another beep.
right. Well, maybe that'll. I was almost done, so maybe that's helpful.
Okay.
I'll just tell you, and then maybe it'll come out in conversation that I'm much more confused about this than I thought I was at the time. Um, So I was actually had been considering exactly the question, how much beep versus how much redness, because I knew that was going to be asked. And you almost didn't ask it. And I was like, oh, okay. But I was considering that. And I actually said to myself, and this was a productive saying, although there was also hearing involved, they'll ask about that. So I said those words, they'll ask about that. And then the other thing that was going on at the time was, again, I was parked on the side of the road next to my house. There was, there were droplets of water on the windscreen. And while I was sitting there writing in the book and sort of, trying to think carefully about what had just happened, I was also kind of absent-mindedly looking at the drops on the windscreen, and I was kind of watching them with a vague interest in whether or not two particular drops that were moving around on the windscreen would intersect with each other. So there were drops on the windscreen. They were sort of making their way down the windscreen slowly. And there was a thought, but not articulated in words. The best I can say is I was looking at them with expectation or anticipation about finding out whether they were going to intersect with each other or not on the windscreen. But that conceptualization of it is post hoc. That's my best attempt to characterize the nature of the looking. The reason I was interested in them for the question, will they intersect?
This is your beep if you want it, Agnes.
Yep, I was just seeing if Michael's finished.
I'm done.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds to me like there are two aspects of this experience. One is they'll ask about that, and then the other is the absent-mindedly looking at the drops on the windscreen. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so what is was it 50-50 or different?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost more like 100-100. I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. But what I'm saying is each of the each of these experiences was like fully present to me. Sometimes 50-50 means I was kind of half attending to this and half attending to that. So each of those experiences may be like slightly distracting from the other, but this felt more like I was completely focused on both of these things. They'll ask about that and looking at the drops. I don't know how to characterize that except saying it's 100-100. And I just got permission to not, for my percentages to not add up to 100. So that's what I'm going with.
Well, that makes sense to me. What you just said makes sense to me.
And it totally makes sense to me too, because I don't think there's any reason to believe actually that there is one experiential realm which divides up into like a pie chart or whatever. There can be two or more experiential realms, and it sounds like what you're saying here is it seems to me there's sort of two experiential realms going on here. In one realm, I'm 100% saying, whatever it was that I was saying, they'll ask about that. And in the other experiential realm, I'm watching these drops and wondering whether they're going to hit each other.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it.
And I think that's a totally important observation, because I think, for example, most of philosophy believes that there's one realm, which I just don't think is true.
Well, philosophers are stupid.
Let's call it misguided.
I just got out of an annoying meeting with philosophers. I'm willing to say being mean right now.
It's philosophers. So they'll ask about that. You said that it was a productive saying, but also with a component of hearing.
Yeah.
After talking about percentages and so forth, would you assign any kind of percentage
It
to
was more
actually?
productive than hearing. So it was primarily a productive thing. But of course, the production goes along with hearing, and I did hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so production doesn't have to go along with hearing. I realize that, but it's a natural consequence, and in this case, the consequence played out. I did hear it, but the sense was much more, I am producing these words rather than these words are impinging themselves upon my ears.
And I am producing them in the realm of saying. I'm speaking these words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's all I have to say about, they'll ask about that. Russ, do you want to say more about that?
I don't think so, unless is there some particular tone or whatever that these.
Just like I said it just now, they'll ask about that, something like that. Yeah.
So clearly intonated with a meaningful, I guess.
I mean, if you want to,
question.
I mean, yeah, it was definitely meaningful. It was kind of me assuring myself that this is something I should think about when I'm writing down these notes.
So this was a meaningful utterance,
Definitely.
spoken in a way that would be appropriate to that situation, basically.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And do we know whether this is innerly or outerly?
No.
Okay. then I'm good about that part.
Okay, so then the second part was the absent-mindedly looking at the drops on the windscreen with this vague interest in whether two particular drops would intersect.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you had this I can't remember how you described it. Here I wrote down thought, but I think you didn't describe it as, I can't remember how you described it, but this sense that you were looking at them with expectation or anticipation.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way I can describe it. So it's the point is that they were being seen almost as objects that have a kind of, I just got done razzing on philosophers, I'm going to use a philosophy term, that have a kind of telos, right? There's some direct, I mean, I wasn't like investing them with like personalities or anything crazy like that, but I was seeing them as objects that like have a destination. And I was sort of vaguely wondering, but not with words, like, are they going to intersect with each other? Um, so obviously I have to describe this in words, but and that's my best attempt to articulate the nature of the seeing. It was a kind of seeing things as directed, but not knowing quite what the direction is.
So the anticipation and expectation component of this experience, would you describe that as residing entirely in the seeing of the droplets?
Yes. And also, I just thought of the better word. I even wrote in my notes here, it's not really anticipation, but I couldn't think of a better word at the time. But I just realized what the better word is. Because anticipation, it wasn't that I was anticipating that they will intersect. It was more like I was wondering, will they intersect? I definitely didn't think I knew the answer to that.
Okay, I'm satisfied.
So what I would say is about this is that when you restated this question, this portion of it, Agnes, you emphasized the absent-mindedness of it, but I don't think there was much absent-mindedness in there, and so I would say that the absent-mindedness came from his initial description. He used the word absent-minded.
I did, but I don't like that word either.
Yeah. So that's the part of the art of it. I think there is available in what he said. I want to retract the word absent-minded. He said absent-minded, but then he just 100%, and I was interested and I wanted to figure out or whatever. Then none of that stuff is absent-minded anymore. So DES is not about the words, and Michael's pretty good, so he's not going to be badgered by your emphasizing a word that shouldn't have been emphasized or whatever. But not everybody is as good as Michael is in that regard. And so there is, I was worried when you emphasized absent-mindedness when in your question, let's put it that way. But we're in the meta realm, which we probably shouldn't have been. And so
I mean, it does give me a chance to say I don't really think it was absent-minded. It was just more like let me not try. Let's leave it at that.
Well, part of what I'm trying to do, I mean, I know we're getting in the meta realm, but let me just say this one thing. Part of what I'm trying to do now in response to your comments is be really careful in hearing what Michael is saying. But I mean, I accept what you said. Like, I agree with what you said that, yes, he initially said absent-mindedly, but if you take the whole thing in context, he didn't perhaps mean that, even though he used that word. So I accept what you say. So anyway, this was just a learning experience for me.
Yeah, for me too, because I still don't know what the right word is. Maybe a lack of focus, or I don't know. But I don't have the right language to say what it was. But it wasn't as if I was like intently looking at them, thinking what's going to happen next. It was much more casual than that.
Well, and I was trying to use your words so that I wasn't
Yeah, no, I used the wrong
my
word.
own interpretation.
I
Like
used the wrong
I'm
word.
trying to
Yeah.
be like interpretation free as much as I can.
You can't be.
Mm.
What you can do if you could have asked, you used mind wandering, but then you talked about 100% or whatever,
Mm.
and
Mm.
that would have not just presupposed the mind wandering. That's what bothered. That's what jangled my careful thin ice deal here from when you use that word. It was that you could have asked about it if you didn't know or whatever. And the reason that they're important, I think, is that from the standpoint of they'll ask about it, the water droplets were in fact absent-minded, I think, because they, that was in a different realm. And but in the realm in which the water droplets were the thing, it wasn't absent-minded.
Mm.
So that term it's important to not slide across that term and not import it into the wrong thing because it screws up there are really sort of two experiential realms going on here.
That actually was helpful.
And that I very often say DES is not about the words, but it is about it's not about the words that the words have to mean exactly one thing. That's what I mean when it's not about the words.
Mm.
But it is about the words if the words push you in the wrong direction or overlook a contradiction. The problem with the word absent-minded here is that it undermined the contradiction between one point of view and multiple points of view.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, that was helpful. In a
No,
both second order and first order way, actually.
yeah. It, and I don't I think asking about experience is very difficult. I absolutely think it is. Until you hear what is experience, and this is easy. You just ask them what's experience, but until you're good at it, it is sort of it's sort of like what they say about Angelo and sculpting. You just knock off the parts of the marble that aren't part of David,
Right.
but it's but it is not a trivial skill. Number three.
Number three. Okay, so again, just starting with a tiny bit of background, I was in my office by this point, and I had just used an email that was actually written to me and Agnes, but I was using it to reply to just Agnes. And so I hit reply, but I accidentally hit reply all, which is actually, in retrospect, although this was not part of the experience, I would have had to have done because anyway, it doesn't matter. And then I wrote the email and I clicked send, and then I couldn't remember in that moment whether I had deleted the other recipient from the email or not. And so, so there's really a few different things that are happening in very close proximity. Some of them are probably on top of each other. So making distinctions about temporal distinctions might prove a little difficult here. But let me just tell you what they were, and then we can try to sort that out. I said the words, sorry, I don't curse a lot, but I did say a curse word. I said, shit, what did I do? And the second thing was a kind of slight feeling of panic, which this was a physical feeling in my left shoulder. And then the other things that were happening were my eyes. So I was trying to find out whether I was trying to discover whether I had correctly deleted the recipient from the email that needed to not be on it. And so this is now real world description stuff, and then I'll get back to the experience. I was looking for the sent emails part of my email program so I could look back at the email and see if I had deleted Owen Flanagan, as it turns out, from the email. And my eyes, so that's the real world. Now back to experience. My eyes were following the arrow on the screen almost as if the arrow was the thing that was looking for the folder, and I was watching it look. And with my right hand, I know this is a lot, and I'll try to sort out what was happening when, but with my right hand, I use my mouse left-handed, so my right hand's free. With my right hand, I had spotted the thing, and I was beginning to point to the spot on the screen where the arrow needed to go to open up that folder so I could look at the email. So to recap, I think maybe this might be the moment before the beep. I said, shit, what did I just do? And then there's this slight feeling of panic, which definitely overlaps with that, but continues beyond the point when I have finished that sentence. And that slight feeling of panic is throughout this entire experience. I'm visually watching the mouse arrow as it looks for the folder, and I'm pointing with my right hand to where it needs to go. So maybe there's just the panic and the eyes and the right hand thing. Maybe the statement, shit, what did I just do? You might consider that just prior to the actual experience we're talking about.
Okay.
But it's very closely tied to it, obviously.
So let's imagine that that's before. I don't think there's any rule that says it should be before or after, but we got enough to talk about
Okay.
with there. So it seems like there are three things. There's a feeling of panic. There is my eyes are watching the arrow looking, and my right hand is about to point or is pointing.
Yeah, and there's a sense in which the arrow, I mean, obviously in the real world, I am controlling the arrow. My left hand is on the mouse moving it. I'm not aware of that at all. There's almost a sense in which the arrow is an independent actor in this whole thing, looking for the folder, and my right hand is the other actor saying, there it is.
And so does this seem like we've talked in previous weeks? Does this seem like one thing that gets divided up into pieces, or does this seem like two or three or whatever independent, separable realms? Or
I think
maybe that question doesn't make sense here.
I understand it. I think that I could conceptually very easily distinguish the panic feeling from the other two things. Yeah, no, they're three separate things. They're three separate things. They're obviously tightly connected, which was preventing me for a moment from seeing that, but they're three separate things, all happening at once.
So the I feel a little bit of panic, and that I gather. Well, I don't shouldn't say I gather that. So let's and
This is like this is like emotion. It's right there.
okay. And when you indicate right there, do you mean it's exactly right there, like a circular
Yeah,
region?
it's about that big, and it's right there underneath my skin. It's not on top of me. It's inside of me. But yeah, it's about fist size right there.
And and do you mean in a region that's about fist size, or do you mean that this region is? I want to know whether this region is demarcated or whether it's just about that size.
No, it's not super sharply demarcated. But yeah, no, it's a reasonably well-defined area
Okay. And
or
three-dimensional?
volume. Yeah,
Three-dimensional?
I said area, but I meant volume, yes.
Okay. And and in the depth, does it go all the way through your body, or is it closer to the surface or in the
It's
middle?
closer to the front, but it's underneath the skin. It's not on top.
Okay.
And
But it doesn't get all the way to the back.
it doesn't get all the way to the back. That's correct.
And does it have a shape, a particular shape? It's a sphere or an oval or
Roughly spherish, yeah.
okay. So a roundish, pretty clearly defined region that's right in here, beneath the bones. Beneath the
That's the
bones?
panic.
That's
Yes.
the panic.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything more to be said about that?
Um,
Like is that what does it feel like?
It just feels like panic. I mean, there's not, so you might be tempted to say, oh, that what that means, Michael, is that your shoulder was tensed up. And of course that might be true, but
I don't,
that's not what I was experiencing. I was experiencing the actual panic is right there.
and I'm gathering there's nothing more to be said about how that panic feels. It's not like it's a hotness or a tightness or a
It's
sharpness
not
or a
really a physical feeling. It has a physical location, but it's not a hotness or a tightness or a pain or any of that stuff. It's
okay,
panic.
okay. And
Not
is
not I don't want to give too strong an impression. I wasn't like completely wigged out about it. I would call it slight panic. It wasn't like I was
you did call it slight panic, I think.
it's not a panic attack or anything like that.
So I feel a slight panic, and that slight panic is in a clear physical location in my body, but it doesn't feel like a bodily panic. It just feels like panic, and that's where it happens to be.
Yes.
Okay. Agnes, you happy with that part?
Is the panic exhausted by the shoulder? Earlier, I thought you said something about the panic permeating the rest of the experience. I may be getting that wrong, and I may be
Oh,
imprecise.
well,
Is it
yeah,
entirely contained in the shoulder, or is there some element of the panic that is in any of these other experiences?
so spatial location, it's right there, well defined, reasonably well defined. Is it so what I was trying to say earlier was just that there's a pretty tight connection between these three things because they're all kind of about the same issue
Mm.
of did I accidentally just email this person that I didn't want to accidentally email. So in that sense it permeates everything else, but its spatial location is very well not very is quite well defined.
So we talked yesterday or whatever about a yes but question, that or yes but answer. That was
Mhm.
a yes but answer to your question, which means the answer to your question is no, it doesn't permeate the rest of it, I think. So about so the eyes are watching the arrow looking.
Yeah.
And does this do I mean that about my eyes? I feel my eyes to be looking, or does it
Oh
mean I'm
no.
watching it?
No, I don't feel my eyes at all. It's just I'm attending to the arrow.
So I'm watching the arrow look for the send button.
Yes. What for the sent mail? Yeah.
Sent, the sent, the sent.
I'd already sent the email, and so I was trying to go back and look at the
Got it.
thing I sent.
Got it. So the sent file, sent folder, I guess is what
Yeah,
we're looking for.
exactly.
But I'm watching that happen.
I'm watching that happen.
And the experience is of I am watching it as an observer of the arrow which is looking,
Yes.
rather than I experience myself as looking.
Yes. That's
Okay.
correct. In fact, if you had, again, I don't know, maybe these comments aren't helpful and you can tell me to stop saying them. In this particular instance, if you had caught me off guard, I would have said something like, it's the arrow that's looking, not me. Now, if you had let me reflect on that for a second, I would have said, well, obviously my hand is in control of the mouse. It must be me looking. But the experience was as if it's the arrow doing the looking, not me. That's why I had to point because I was showing the arrow where to go.
Right. Right. I understand that. But my pause there was, I was reflecting on whether I wanted to ask you about the as if, and because my experience of your description was didn't that there was no as if involved. It wasn't that I'm watching as if the arrow is looking. It's I'm watching the arrow looking.
Okay, so maybe I was being too subtle. It's the latter for sure. What I was trying to say is this was too compact of a statement on my part. So what I said a minute ago, I think, was something like, if you had caught me off guard, I would have said, it's as if the arrow is looking. But that's already a meta comment about what was happening. What was actually happening was I was watching the arrow look.
Right. And that's what I understand. And in reality, we could say, well, I'm doing the looking and my left hand is actually enacting that looking or whatever. But that, as far as the seeing of the arrow is concerned, that is not relevant.
Yes.
Okay. So the point there is that the as if is not part of the experience. The
That's
as if
right.
is a
That's right.
meta.
And I was misleading about that, but that's, yeah.
It's a hugely important difference from my point of view. And then I am pointing with my right hand.
That's correct.
And I'm taking that as being, this is a fact of the universe. I am, in fact, pointing at the screen.
Oh, there was definitely intentionality involved here. So it was, in fact, the beep happened actually literally somewhere between like here and here. I mean, my finger was moving towards the screen as the beep happened. But I didn't have, there was no words here, but if I were to describe it in words, I would say something like I was showing the arrow where to go. Like that was a totally intentional act, as if I might show somebody where the door to the room is or something.
So this portion of the experience is more about the it's over here-ness than it is about the action of the pointing.
Yeah, okay, that's fair, and I probably should have been more clear about that. So I was pointing, but really it was you're right. It was more about the showing than it was about the physical activity of doing this.
Okay.
That's just how the showing manifested.
Right. So what we've got here, I guess, is three aspects. I feel a slight panic, and it is here in a pretty well demarcated region that has extent and whatever inside my body. That I am watching the arrow look for the send folder, and I am I'm gesturing, I'm gesturally indicating with my right hand where that send folder is should be looked for again.
Right. That's all accurate.
Then I think I'm good about that.
This story has a happy ending, by the way. I did delete his name from the email.
I was going to say that too. But... Congratulations, Michael.
So I'm good about that. You're good
too.
about that? Number
Yep.
4?
So I'm still in the office. It's still this morning. I am in the middle, again, this is all just background information. I'm in the middle of creating a makeup quiz for a student who missed a quiz. And there's there's two then experiential aspects to this. One, again, in the mode of production primarily, but hearing not absent, I said, let him try the bonus. So I had gotten to the point of the makeup quiz where there was a bonus question on the original quiz, and I had been pondering, very briefly pondered prior to this, whether I'm going to let this makeup quiz student have an opportunity at the bonus question or not. And I had decided, yes, I will let him try it. And I expressed that by saying to myself, let him try the bonus. So that's one thing. And then the other is I was looking at the bonus problem because, the way I was making this makeup quiz was I was just basically trying to ask very similar questions, but change the actual details of the question. So I'm testing the same thing, but not by asking the same questions. And I was looking at the bonus problem while I was saying let him try the bonus, and also kind of at the same time then beginning to plan out how I was going to change it. And the way that manifested as an experience was this was a logic problem. And so there's characters on the screen. It's a tilde, BD, arrow, JA is what's on the screen. The B and the J are capital. And I'm focused right now on the tilde, and the tilde was very quickly, not slowly at all, but still continuously, it didn't jump. It moved across, it started its life in the original quiz in front of the BD, And while I was looking at it and while I was saying, let him try the bonus, it very quickly moved across the arrow to in front of the JA. And that's in fact what I ended up doing to it, but that's not relevant to the experience right now. So it was a little bit like if the tilde was showing me what to do, like here's what you can do with me to change this problem. it I didn't experience it that way exactly, but it was a little bit like that. But if you want to get more sort of um, hardcore about it, there was a visual experience of a tilde very, very quickly moving a few characters over on the screen.
Okay. So there are two aspects of this experience. There was the production primarily of let him try the bonus, and then this visual experience with the tilde moving across the screen. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what percentages would you assign to each of those?
Yeah, that,
50-50, 100, 100, 70?
no, it's more like 50-50. Yeah.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I mean, obviously, again, these are connected in some way conceptually. It's not like there's two unrelated things happening in my experience, but yeah, they were equally present to me.
So, or let him try the bonus. You said it was primarily production, but hearing was also present. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was there anything, um, did you say it just like that? Let him try the bonus. Was there anything else about
Yeah,
that?
it was pretty vanilla speaking.
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm. Okay, that's all I want to say about that aspect.
Allowed or inner? Don't know.
I'm sorry?
Allowed or inner or don't know?
I don't know. I was in my office alone. Not that this is part of the experience, but in almost always there are exceptions, of course. If I think I'm by myself, it doesn't even really occur to me to monitor that.
Okay.
Can
And
we
that
move?
the good
Oh,
news about that, Russ, is, and I think I've mentioned this already, maybe even on the second day, is and this is one of the most surprising, this is a meta comment, sorry, but this is one of the most surprising things to me about this whole process. There's a couple things that are surprising to me about it, or that I think I may have learned. But one of them is I thought the beeper was going to be massively intrusive. And in fact, like it takes 30 seconds. Maybe that's a comment on my lack of long-term attention, but it takes like 30 seconds and it's gone. I haven't I it just I'm not aware of it anymore until it beeps, of course.
I think that's pretty common actually, because it's not that interesting.
Until it beeps.
So I'm understanding this. We've been using productive, but my understanding is that this is really I'm speaking this, and the speaking involves some hearing and whatever, but the experiences of speaking it rather than producing words. I'm speaking. This is a question
Yeah,
I
no,
guess.
yeah, that's right. What I've been saying productive, I mean I'm aware of the act of speaking.
Fine. So I'm more speaking than I am. It makes sense to call this speaking. I am saying this,
Yes. I'm not just hearing it. I'm saying
but
it.
I'm not just hearing it.
Yes.
Got it. And I'm not just producing words. I'm saying these
And
words.
I'm not just like thinking words or something like that. No, I'm definitely speaking.
Okay. That's the way I understand it.
can we go to the
Tilde.
other thing now? The tilde? Um, so the tilde moving across from in front of the BD to in front of the J.
Mhm.
Um, that was a visual experience. When you say it moved across, are we imagining that it like, or sorry, what's the visual experience of it moving straight across
No, it
through
jumped
the
over.
BD or
No,
over
it was an arc.
an arc?
It jumped over the BD and the arrow and landed in front of the JA.
Okay. And was the motion just how you described, like a woo woo?
Yes, it was just like
That
that, but
kind of
much faster.
much faster.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And you also mentioned that there was this quality to this experience of the tilde showing you what to do. Uh,
Yeah, it was like it was in some ways almost the inverse of I didn't think about this before. The other one, I mean, it was yes, it had the feeling of it. I mean, I wasn't personifying it in this way, but it had kind of the sense of the tilde was saying, here's where you can put me. And it was right.
okay, those are all my questions.
So we have used the term visual experience, and by that, do you mean see?
Yeah,
I
I
s-
mean, this was I almost because I introduced you all to my crazy concept of magic mind, I almost use that to describe this, but it's not really that. Um, at least in my way of thinking, but maybe someone else would classify these as the same. But it's very similar to that in the sense that it starts by just seeing what's there, and then the thing that's there does something. And in this case, I already said what it did.
so my question is, from the standpoint of your experience, do I, and I don't really care about the explanation, magic mind or whatever about it, do I see this tilde move?
Yes, it was a complete visual experience,
Okay.
or completely visual, I should say.
And do I mean as experientially, I see this tilde take this arc and go up and over?
Yes.
Do I mean see in the same way that I see the JA and the BD on the
Yeah,
screen?
it's all there in the same, it's all living in the same space.
Okay. And experientially the same kind of a deal. And I can say, well, this is magic mind, and I know, and in fact, it really wasn't moving or whatever. But as far as my experience in the moment was, I am seeing this tilde arc up across the screen.
Yes.
Okay. And about the tilde being, here's what you can do. Is that the same kind of a deal as the arrow? I was watching the arrow.
It is a little bit similar. I started to make that connection a second ago and then stopped myself, but there is some similarity, yes. The difference is, and the reason I stopped is that the arrow didn't really, again, I don't want to, before I say this, I don't want to suggest that I had consciously personified these things, but I'm going to speak kind of in anthropomorphizing terms here. It's not that in the case of the arrow, it kind of was looking, but it wasn't finding. It didn't know where to go. But the tilde knew exactly where to go.
So I see the tilde demonstrating to me. I see the arrow searching.
Yes.
But in both cases, I see as if I see I don't know exactly how to say this, but I see the thing demonstrating something, the thing having a mind of its own, I guess is what I wanted,
Yes.
the
I
way to
mean,
phrase.
again, it's that's the right way to describe it, from one point of view. But there was never in my mind that I can recall, at least, um, or could recall when I was writing these notes. There was it wasn't. I hadn't really invested these things with personhood or something like that. They were inanimate objects, but they had a mind of their own at the same time.
So
There, I
maybe
just invested them with personhood, but I don't know.
how does agentic mean to quote
Yeah,
Russ?
yeah. That I mean,
The
that's fair. Yeah, that's
so
probably a
I
better way.
see in a the tilde agentically is saying this is what could happen,
Or
and
yeah, or showing me rather than saying it.
showing me agentically, and the arrow is agentically looking
Yes,
in my experience of it.
yes.
And I'm not, I understand you're not confusing whether the arrow really is an agent and whether the tilde is really an agent.
I mean, those things weren't really. The question wasn't part of my experience. I wasn't asking myself that question in the moment. But it's again, it's one of these cases where if you had been able to interrupt me in that moment and said, Michael, what's happening here? I would not have said, oh, well, the arrow is an agent and it's looking for something.
Right.
But that's how I was experiencing
But
it.
that's what the experience was. The
Yes.
experience was as the agent as arrow, arrow as agent, and the tilde as agent.
Yes.
So I'm good about number 4, and we are 8 minutes past our hour. And
Well, that's fine by me because I didn't know how the hell to describe the next one. So
I'm sorry to be missing that one.
now I don't have to describe it.
So we could describe it, or we could say, well, let's.
I'm done for the day. I don't know what Agnes's schedule
I'm
is.
also, I have to get going also, yeah.
Okay. No, I mean I'm done for the day, as in I could sit here forever, but you can't, so that's
I
fine.
can't, I have to go, yeah.
All right. So I would say let's say that the gods of the whatever who are watching over us are saying we're not gonna do that. We're gonna save ourselves the interest or the difficulty or whatever it would be of that. And so are we gonna do this again?
Sure.
I'm happy to do it again.
Me too.
I don't know, Russ, what the protocol is for ending. So I'm probably, unless I turn 75 at some point during this, I'm probably every time you ask just going to say, sure.
Well, the protocol is when we have something better to do, then we're going to do something better, and that comes from you turning 75 or the calendar showing that we don't have these many times, or it seems like we've said these things all before or whatever. I don't think
Yeah, I
there's
mean
any
that
right.
I guess it's the last one that strikes me as the most natural way to say, okay, we've done this now. And I don't know, I don't have any experience with this, of course, so I don't know what that looks like exactly. But that does feel like to me like that when things start to feel not to me because it all feels similar. It all feels familiar to me because that's my life. But when you guys are thinking to yourselves, "Oh, well, we're just getting more of the same here."
Well, my guess is it will occur to you too. So when you think, well, this is like beep 4.6 and sort of similar to 3.7, and we're talking a lot like that, and we're all going to think that more or less at the same time, was my guess. And then we'll
Well,
then
I'll
we'll think
just
we've done enough.
yeah, maybe I have really pretty poor episodic memory. So you guys probably remember the former beeps much better than I do. That'd be my guess. I
I
could be
used
wrong about
I
that.
used to have better memory than I've got now. But I also think that there's some value to forgetting things. So
Well, that's good
the
because
good news and bad news. So when are we going to do this, I guess is the question.
right.